Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Today, I'm talking with Josh Allan Dykstra. He is a future of work keynote speaker and the world's foremost practitioner on human energy. He has spent the last 2 decades building 5 companies and working with some of the most iconic brands on earth. His clients have a combined employee count of over 1 million people. Josh is also an author, TEDx speaker, and founder and CEO of the Work Revolution, where they fight for the future by fixing work. Welcome, Josh. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Chuck. So glad to be here.
Yeah, this is fun having a friend on that I've watched your journey, and it's been fun to see what's transpiring. Today, we're going to talk about human energy. We're just going to go right after it. And the idea may be surrounding the idea that energizing people instead of sucking the life out of them. So let's just start with human energy, Josh. What do you mean? Because we could come up, I could come up with my own. What do you mean when you say human energy?
Yeah, I probably want to even back up even further and just talk about the word energy.
Sure.
Because I think the word energy is a funny word because people hear it very differently, depending on kind of the frame you bring into the situation. You might be thinking about oil or coal or fossil fuels, or you might be thinking about crystals and energy healers, or you might be thinking about wind power, renewables. There's so many things that we could think when we hear the word energy, and so what I think is really important is to ground this in the idea of human energy, which is the thing that makes everything happen, right? Like nothing happens. So when I talk about this, what I mean is that nothing happens in your organization if a human didn't have the energy to start it or to keep it going. Nothing happens. It's the thing that moves everything in your organization. And yet we hardly tend to human energy at all. We hardly think about it, right? We had a little blip after the pandemic where it was kind of like, oh, maybe we should care about energy. And we kind of started caring about it in the frame of burnout, right? It's like, oh my goodness, we don't have this anymore. Maybe we should pay attention to it. But as often as possible, organizations tend to largely ignore this thing that actually makes them move.
Why is that? Why do they do that?
I know.
Mystifying.
It really is. It really is. And it's somehow, I think we have a hard time, we as kind of a species, we have a hard time with invisible things in general, systems and, these things that we can't see.
Principles and vision.
Totally.
And ideas.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. We really like tangible, concrete, visible things. And so we always kind of drift towards those, I think, in our organizations. And, energy is like that, right? It's like, man, we feel it when we don't have it, but otherwise we kind of pretend like it isn't there or it doesn't matter. And of course that's not true, but it's easy to ignore because it's invisible.
So I think people have tried to do something with this, and they've come up with this idea in the last 15 to 20 years of creating engagement. And the idea seems to be that Gallup every month does this survey that like 28 to 32% of people every month are engaged, and the other 70% are phoning it in. Is that a form of lack of energy?
I think it's getting in the right direction. Yeah. Right. Like, so the way Gallup measures engagement, like they cover a whole lot of things, right? So they would hate me if I reduced their survey to just this one topic, but it is getting in that direction, right? Because it really is trying to measure, do I feel kind of like meaningfully connected to the work that I'm doing? And do I have the tools that I need to do that? And right, like all of that is in the right direction. It's just kind of like not explicitly clear enough for my liking. Because I've found that working in organizations, putting this lens of energy on it is just really helpful. It's really like you can get really granular and really specific. Does this activity energize you, or does it drain you, or is it somewhere in the middle? Right? You can get really specific, and it connects to flow states, which is also really helpful because that's when we tap into productivity. People are so much more productive when they're in flow, and if we can do more flow at work, that's good for everybody.
Yeah, and I think we've landed on this, floundered around for 100 years and landed on this idea of let's get people more engaged. Frankly, because it does more for the organization maybe than it even does for the individual. because I can be 100% engaged and completely de-energized by everything I'm doing. And that's not going to last very long. So yeah, you might scare me or fear me or joy me into doing something for a while that I really I'm not energized by. And so we're not getting to the root cause with something like engagement. We got millions and tens and hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on engagement. I think it's kind of a ruse that says, I want you to make me more money, and you go ahead and burn out. That's okay.
Yeah. 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 It really, there's something about the engagement topic that, it hasn't changed much, to your point. Like over the last, 2 or 3 decades, right? It's always just been the same. And it's just kind of, oh my goodness, like we need to come up with some new ideas here to actually move the needle on this darn thing. But yeah, then it really also needs to get more specific, right? It really needs to get into, okay.
So how do you, being specific, what are some ways in which we could tell that I'm energized by something?
Yeah. So you've got this really great energy detector called your body, right? And it knows, and it probably has a lot more practice noticing, especially at work, the things that suck the life out of you, right? Yeah. So, right, like it's pretty good at that, right? I can say, oh my goodness, that thing, oh, I hate doing that. Oh, I hate that meeting. I hate working with that person, right? We can identify those things. We've got more practice with that. What we don't have very much practice in is the opposite, right? Mm-hmm. What actually brings us energy? And so, but your body does that too. Yeah. Once you just have to like remember how to pay attention to what energizes you. But you can just do this, keep a little like energy journal. Right. So just like we say, make a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle vertically, put, energized and drained, on each column.
Yeah.
And then just start keeping track, right? It's like, oh man, when I did that thing, that really felt draining. Oh, when I did that thing, I really liked it. Right. Like I could do that all day and just start paying attention. And it's not that complicated, but it's not something we really do. It's not something we actively do.
It isn't. And I think the older you are, the harder that concept is, because it's not just paying attention. I think in many cases, it's giving yourself permission to ask yourself, how do I feel about this? Do I feel energized? Do I not feel like, we're not supposed to do that. My mom told me, you don't go to work to, have fun. You got to work or to be energized. You got to work to make money. You can come home and get re-energized. Work saps the life out of you, and you come home to get that fixed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, so we're fighting against kind of a number of really entrenched kind of belief systems here like that, right? It's like, work is called work for a reason, right? And work is a 4-letter word, right? On and on. We've got all of these things that kind of, these stories, cultural stories that are deeply embedded that try to tell us, if work doesn't hurt you a little bit, it's probably not work, right? And it's just like, why? Who says, right? Like why you spend so much of your life at work, probably more time awake than doing anything else, right? Who says it should suck so bad? Like maybe it should actually energize you. And the cool thing about this too is that this works for the organization as well, because everything works better when you optimize for human energy. So customers are treated better, right? When my tank is full, right, I approach solutions with more ideas. I come to my colleagues with less tension, right? Like everything works better when my tank is full of energy. So it's better for the company too. So there's really no downside to this approach.
So what? We're just going to scratch the surface and annoy everybody on this today, because we don't do long podcasts. But give us one thing. Where could I start to help measure, to help get people and to figure some of this out? What's one place I could start?
Yeah. The free thing is probably this energy journal idea. Like you can start that today, right? You can start it now. Just start keeping track of what energizes you, what doesn't. And then after that, like do that for a week or two, and then go back and look for patterns. Right? So what you're trying to do is some pattern recognition, and you're trying to kind of connect some dots to say, oh, I've got a theme here, right? Like when I'm doing strategic things, I feel good, right? When I get to do detaily things, or when I get to do people-related things, or right? Like get it as granular as you possibly can in certain theme areas, and because there's going to be a common thread that you can tie and say, okay, when I tend to do these kinds of activities, I feel good. And when I tend to do these other ones, man, I feel dull or, distracted, or, I want to procrastinate, right? There's certain activities that put us in that that physical space. So just start to connect the dots and pay attention. If people really want to go deeper, and you know this, Chuck, we've got an assessment that we love that helps people do that. So they could go down that path and you know, get in touch with me. I can tell you more about it, but you can do a lot of this.
Can you give us a URL or some way of some identifier to push people in that direction? Because I think that would be a great second step for them, is just to look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way to do that, probably just head to my website and ping me, probably at joshallan.com.
Okay. And it's two A's, ALLAN, Josh Allan Dykstra, DYKSTRA.
Yeah, but you can just go to joshallan.com though. You don't have to worry about spelling Dykstra. Yeah.
Got it. Good. Well, so how do I marry this up, Josh, with the idea of a job description? Hey, I got this job I need to do, and some of it energizes me and some of it doesn't, or I don't know. You know, how do I, as a leader, or how do I, as a stakeholder, someone who's a member of an organization, how do I put these things together? Because that's a rub, I would guess.
Yeah, it can be. And I think it's also an opportunity for leaders and team members to kind of renegotiate, what do jobs look like? Right. So again, everything works better when we optimize for human energy. So if leaders can let go a little bit of their control freakishness around, like, this job has to be done in this way by this person, right? Like, if we can let go of some of that and just say, hey, who's energized by working on this part? Okay, and let people self-select, right? This is very congruent with self-managing distributed decision-making, right? Like, because it's very autonomous. You know, it's like, who's energized by this? Why don't you vote with your feet and walk in and do it? And then other people are going to be energized by other things. And what you can do then is start to use this also as a hiring philosophy, because you might have a spot in your team where you realize, oh, actually, we need to get this thing done, but nobody here is energized by that. Go recruit for it. That becomes part of your posting. And you say, hey, we're looking for somebody who loves doing this thing because we don't have that person on our team yet. But you deliberately start to kind of staff around the topic of who's energized by doing what, as much as you possibly can, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a small business, you know, it might take a while. But
none of this is perfect. It's just better. We're not shooting for perfect, because there's all kinds of arguments against doing something like this. I'm hearing some of our audience say chaos, anarchy. Yeah. And I've never experienced that in the organizations where I've seen this happen. It's pretty simple. You don't lose anything. You write down everything that needs to get done. And then people put their names beside those things. Yeah. And yes, there will probably be some things that nobody's name gets put beside. I still have things in my life that I don't like doing. And you know what? There's nobody else to do them. And I'm okay with it, because the majority of what I'm doing is stuff that energizes me. So I can do a few things to serve the organization. Even that energizes me. So do things I don't like is actually energizing, in a sense that I do these 2 or 3 things because it serves the organization, and that energizes me to serve the organization. So it's not chaos. It's not anarchy. It's just a completely different way of doing this that will actually put people in the highest and best use of their time, talent, and energies. And you're right. We could go on for probably 3 hours on the research that shows what you've just said, that when you are kind to people and treat them like adults and get them into what is the highest and best use of their time and energy, those companies all live at the top of their industries, every single one of them. Yeah. And people stay longer, productivity. I mean, everything, all measures of good company come from getting people into what is their best use of their time and talents. Still do some things that work for me that I wouldn't do if it wasn't up to me, but even that in a way energizes me, because I'm serving the organization by doing some things that I don't like doing.
Yeah. And there's other, strategies here where you can do just like what you just did, which is to reframe certain activities through the lens of something that brings you energy, right? So there's all sorts of kind of tricks and things you can do here to approach your work in a more energizing way. And that is the goal, right? To get at as many just intrinsically motivating things as possible, like do those things as much as you can. And then, if there's some crap that you got to do, right? Try to get rid of it, right? Try to get somebody in who loves doing it, because that's always the best option. But if you can't, there's probably ways you can look at it differently. And that helps too.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this is called the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. It doesn't mean that it's always for the business owner or anybody else. This is getting everybody off the treadmill. If we could imagine if we had an organization where there was 100% of the people were doing things they were energized by. I have seen these. I don't have to imagine them. I've seen organizations with 100, 200, 300, 1,000 plus people, and it's 100% engagement.
Yeah.
There's no 28 to 32% every month. And it's because they're energized. Imagine what that would be like and what that does for your organization to have somebody like that. That's everybody off the treadmill. That's people running to work, climbing the walls to get in. There's a washing machine factory in Brazil where they've never had to put out an ad for anybody because the people are climbing the walls to get in because they do this stuff in a washing machine factory. They worry about the human energy, and they ask people, the first question they ask when they're interviewing somebody is, when would you like to come to work? And if they want to come to work in the evenings or in the mornings, they figure out there's a team that works like that, and they work with that team. So it's bizarre. In a sense, it's not new at all. And yet it's an incredibly narrow sector of businesses that are doing this yet. I don't know, 1%, 2%, but I do believe it is the future of work.
Yeah, I do too. It's the reason everything happens, right? Because a human, has the energy to start it or keep it going. And so the more you can kind of recognize that and pay attention to it and then foster it, right? Put as many things around your people as possible that are life-giving. So you can look at all so this is another thing you could do is look at all your systems. So look at the way you do performance management, if you're doing that, the way you're doing expense reports, the way you're communicating, like what platforms are you using? Are those things actually energizing for people, or do people just tolerate/hate them, right? Like a lot of these systems are terrible. They're life-sucking, right? Yeah. Some of these HRIS systems out, right? Like some of these things are just like Franken software garbage. Like you're torturing people by making them use these things, right? Like don't do that. Like sucking the life out of people. That's so much friction. You need more flow.
Yeah. And why don't you ask them? Why don't you ask them how they like the software? Well, I want to point something out. We're going to have to close here in a minute, but I want to point something out you've used as a very simple, powerful theme that I'm just recognizing, and that is this. It seems like what you've been saying and what I've been hearing in my head for the last 50 years is that most of work is built on the negative. What's the least amount of work I can do? What can I hate the least? How do I get around? And running from things. And you have people running toward things. And it's so much more powerful. When we try and run away from something, it sucks us back in. But running towards something we love instead of running away from something we hate, that just feels right as a human being. It feels good and right inside. And that's what I hear you saying you're doing with human energy is let's find out where the things are that people will run toward and let's get them to run them.
Totally. That's really well said, Chuck. So it's why I call this my company, The Work Revolution, because revolution in its literal sense means to turn it around completely, right? Like the earth does a full revolution around this. It's a complete turnaround. And so exactly what you're saying, like it's a turnaround, right? We flip this around. Instead of work being this thing that extracts energy from people, we turn it into something that gives energy to people, and everything works better.
Yeah. Well, Josh, you do a lot of public speaking and have worked with a lot of big organizations and smaller ones. And I want to give people an opportunity to find you. JoshAllan.com. Is that the way to go?
That's perfect. That's perfect. LinkedIn on LinkedIn. Yep. And LinkedIn, connect with me there. I love to connect with people. So that'd be great.
Okay. Well, I strongly encourage people to do this. This is the future of work. And I've said this for years. I said it in my TED Talk that companies that do this are going to thrive. And the companies that don't do what you're saying will be left behind. And we might as well jump on board now because all the data is on your side. It's not like we have to wait around to see if this works. Yeah. We just have to look at the data and say, why am I still doing something that was invented for factories? So let's get a hold of Josh Allan at joshallan.com and let's revolutionize the way we work.
Awesome. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you for all the work you do.
Oh, thank you, my friend. It's great to have you on.
Likewise. Appreciate it.
That wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow, GROW, @cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.